And we return. Nemo, welcome back. We are covering the FIDE World Corporate Chess Championship. We are in the Western pools. There are two of them, Pool A and Pool B. We've seen Microsoft do their thing. They have won both their matches thus far. They're playing Anahuac. We've seen Goldman Sachs do well, win both of their matches. American Express in the Western Pool B, playing Amazon. Lots of good matchups in store for us. Which match are you potentially most excited for?
Uh,
Too many good ones. I know. I feel like
yeah,
trick question. Trick
yeah,
question.
there are too many interesting ones.
You're like, which future employer do I want to offend the least? So let's
Yeah, who do I potentially want to work for in the future? Gotta think about this one.
well, we have had two really exciting rounds where some of the favorites, they've won their matches, but they've suffered individual defeats just because of the lineups of the other teams, still strong players throughout. And let's look at the standings overall, see where we're at this stage after two rounds. You see that Microsoft Redmond in first place. Game points is actually the first thing to look at. So game points is most important. So even if you've tied a match, you still have a chance if you just rack up those game points, and then match points will be the tiebreaker. So Microsoft Redmond in first, Anahuac there in second, and you have Goldman Sachs tied there with Telus and Grupo Munoz, and also NCAP. So lots of teams at the top in Pool A, and then in Pool B, you see that American Express, Amazon US West, they've won all 8 of their games.
Yeah, it's very, very impressive, honestly. But we also have to keep in mind a lot of, well, Microsoft Redmond and American Express definitely fielded two very, very, very strong teams.
They certainly have. This is no joke. These teams are super powerful, and we just remind everybody that while we're going to pay attention to the chess over the board, this is also part of a larger project. FIDE is been involved with these 3 projects, as you see here: Chess in Education, Chess for People with Disabilities, and FIDE Chess Veteran Support Program. So if you're able to, please consider a donation with the command donate in chat or by clicking the panel below the stream. And without further ado, the games are going to begin shortly, so we'll turn our attention back to the chess, but we just wanted to bring that call to action to remind people that this is part of a larger initiative that we are certainly appreciative of.
Definitely. I mean, I'm very, very excited also to see, the tomorrow's games as well as the finals. All of these corporations are participating for a good cause and definitely bring a lot of attention to the world of chess.
That's right. And I see questions still about how is Carissa Yip, 17 years old, playing on American Express? I mean, is she employed there? No, teams are able to have a free agent on their roster.
Whoa, 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 whoa. How do you know she's not employed there? Maybe she's just a very young intern, you know?
True, but I'm pretty sure she was taken as a free agent, just like Anish Giri for Optiver. There are collaborations, partnerships, sponsorships from corporations with individual players. So we have seen this in the earlier stage. And Carissa, we have her up on screen. We have her with the white pieces here. We have a Sicilian. So Nemo, this could be a sharp game.
I'm excited to see this. I love watching Sicilian games, especially when one of the sides might not potentially know theory, because then we will see very exciting attacks.
And it looks like Carissa is spending time after e6. And it might not be about theory so much as choosing which line to play, where you can play in this position to move like pawn to f3 or pawn to f4, or you have a different choice depending on the type of game you want. The queen can always slide to d2. So Carissa just trying to figure out the best way forward, not trying to rush at the stage, but she's about to be a minute down the clock.
Yeah, I mean, she's definitely thinking a lot for a position that she's probably seen before. I mean, she's very strong national master. She's definitely seen and prepared this opening many times. Maybe she's deciding which line she wants to go for tonight.
And well, we see Carissa thinking, let's go to another board in this matchup. We see Mark Ginsburg taking on Lisa McDonald, or Elizaveta Orlova. That's maiden name, right? So player from Canada, probably somebody you know. I mean, there's a lot of Canadians today.
Yes, definitely seeing a lot of Canadians. Definitely familiar with Lisa. I mean, she's been playing chess for a very long time, and she was very, very. She was very active in the Canadian chess scene a couple of years back. But I do believe she recently moved either to the U.S. or further away from Toronto.
Yeah, and still a presence in the chess community for sure. I believe has written a book about chess, streams sometimes, and now playing in the FIDE corporate chess championship. So right now with the white pieces, approach that I typically play in online chess, where a slow maneuvering game b3 was the start, bishop fianchettos, and you may think, well, what's White's actual plan? There may not be a set strategy just yet, but just develop the pieces. This queen can come to c2. Perhaps White can consider castle queenside. Of course, you can play bishop e2, castle kingside if you'd like. So you have options here.
Mhm.
And while Black is the higher rated player, so far the position is pretty solid for both.
Yes. Um, Also, I just saw somebody from Goldman Sachs eat a lollipop, and I just have to say that has made my entire night. You know, it's just like this man, probably in his like late 20s, playing the FIDE World Corporate Chess Championship, and just eating a lollipop. So that was what distracted me for a
You
little
know,
bit there.
everyone deserves a snack, a little dessert at some point. And, all these teams, we can see them behind the scenes. They're on big calls, making sure that fair play is upheld. It is going to be, but it's all these arbiters working hard, trying to keep an eye on all the players. So we have
Mhm.
scenes with various players. We have American Express
Oh,
here.
it's actually an American Express with the lollipop. Okay.
Yeah, well, they're hanging. Like, you see the lollipop right now.
Yeah, you see the lollipop. He's just holding it.
Well, that's a focused player there trying to figure out the best strategy. And it's brain fuel. Yes, exactly. I see you there in the chat. Just trying to make sure that you're energized so that you can play your best chess. And well, we
Hmm.
saw Carissa on board one. We have Mark Ginsburg there on the bottom right of our screen and playing on board two. And then we have Andy Lin on the bottom left, board three. And well, just this whole team, super strong.
Yeah, for sure. And there is a reason why they are currently in first place. So huge props to them for pulling together such a strong team.
Right, indeed. And Dario Teodori has the black pieces in this game. It's right over 2,100. And look at black with the pawn structure. The bishop is behind the pawns, but at some point that can open up. White is better here for the time being because black isn't fully developed. The d5 square is one that the knight can hop into, but I believe that black is quite solid. So unless white can quickly launch an initiative, and there we see f5, just as I was going to say, unless you can strike, black should be okay, but f5 played, and look at this move, f6. You do not want to play this way. You're very cramped on the king side.
Mm-hmm. This is one of those positions where I'll say that, wow, White's position is going to look very good. However, this g4 move, I'm not 100% sure about sometimes because Black can actually respond with g5 and completely close off the king side. And then you'll be asking yourself, where can I attack next?
Right, and g5 was played. I think this knight can go g3 into h5. That's a square that is now available to White's pieces. And this knight on c3 can go to d5. How's that bishop? Should we even call that a bishop anymore?
It's a tall pawn now.
Yeah, it's a really bad bishop. And there's a common expression that bad bishops defend good pawns. Unfortunately, there are not just one pawn, but a second one in the way. That bishop's not going anywhere. So if I'm white, yes, I can go play on the king side, try to checkmate you, but I can also play on the queen side because this bishop isn't helping out, whereas the bishop on e3 is staring in both directions.
Yeah, I mean, that bishop is not a bishop I would like to have for sure. And it's also just very difficult in these positions to find an idea for Black to play. I think White should just play this slowly. You know, he doesn't really need to play any committal moves. That's what I've recently discovered. You really don't need to try to force anything happen.
That's right. So I'm going to go back to the Carissa Yip game because it looks like the board has opened up here. This still, out of the Sicilian, but White's king all of a sudden in some danger over here if you're not careful.
Why did she only have 5 minutes?
That's a good question. She spent 1 minute and 30 seconds on 7th move, queen to d2. So a lot of time spent there. Another 41 seconds spent a few moves from now playing this choice f4. So 41 seconds. And then as we continued at this point after e5, spent another minute and a half taking on e5. So some tough choices had to be made, and she spent time making them. But look at Black here with all the time in the world in a very solid position.
This is very interesting because, I mean, she didn't really get anything out of the opening. In fact, I think Black's position is pretty great despite, there's really not much for White to do in this position. You can't really get an attack going. Black has the pair of bishops. Black has the half open c file in order to put pressure on c3 and then put pressure on a2.
Yes, all that looks appealing. And then what if Carissa tries to just plant her knight on d5? So if you take me, look at opposite colored bishops. I can take back with the pawn, and then I have a passed pawn that you have to worry about. So that's my main concern for black is what is happening, and is white going to be able to put this knight on d5? Are you really going to capture there, and what are the consequences?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, knight d5 is probably Carissa's one of Carissa's only plans. I do think, however, black can end up doubling the rooks on the d file and just put a lot of pressure on the d pawn. And white just can never really push c4 or anything to defend the pawn because of the king and the bishop just being right aligned on the long diagonal.
Yeah, not going to be an easy task for Carissa here, but the time now black is starting to think, and that happens where if somebody's really well prepared, they move pretty much instantly, they build a lead in the clock, and then you get out of theory, and that's where the stronger players often make their mark, right? Carissa is the high rated player. She's an international master, very talented. And now that she's escaped the opening with a pretty neutral looking position, I think that black is comfortable, but it's not clear what black's plan is going to be, that this is where Carissa can try to start outplaying her opponent.
Hmm. For sure. This is just one of those positions where I think that, you know, there's definitely still chances for white, despite the fact that black has the pair of bishops. But Carissa is an international master for a reason, even though her opponent is 2300. Still a very, very strong player. So, Carissa. Let's see what Carissa does in a little bit.
Right. So let's go on over to Francesco Grimbaldi's game, playing for Microsoft Redmond here with the white piece. The international master, Oscar Gerardo Sanchez. So it's GM versus IM. That's a really good battle. And now we see, look at these pieces where there's a lot happening down the C file. White's rook is here, so that's good news for Francesco. And look at the bishops. This bishop on C8 is not a particularly great piece, whereas White's bishops are both outside of the pawn chain. So I would say with the rook's placement, with the bishops both out for White, should be a slight pull.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very equal position right now. You can see him peering very earnestly into the camera.
Yeah, if this is an internship, I gotta win so I can get a full-time position here.
That would actually be how I'm thinking. Honestly, the pressure now comes on to, if I win, will they give me a full-time job,
That's part of the offer to be on the team, is
Mhm.
playing for your job at the company. No, of course, Francesco, great player. Someone I know from St. He played, went to St. Louis University, a student there, and is a really good addition to this team. With a strong grandmaster on board one, you feel like you can contend with anybody. And right now, after Queen E7, he's trying to figure out a move because his pieces all look good, it's aesthetically pleasing, but you need to make progress from there. And Rook F to D1 is a possibility. He instead plays Bishop G3. I like that move so that E5 wouldn't come with an attack on the bishop. And you can think about playing Bishop H4 at some moment to create a pin. That could be very annoying.
Yeah, for sure. One
Oh,
of these positions where it's just like it's so symmetrical right now, but you do have to keep in mind that black actually has a bishop on c8 that will probably not get developed for a couple more moves. So Francesco needs to use this time to create a little bit of pressure on black's position.
that's right. And well, I see a pressure in White's position. This next game I'm going to pull up here. Max Uritsky with the black pieces, FIDE Master Isaac Garcia with the white pieces. And I just looked at first glance. I saw King on F2, and I was pretty concerned. But now that I'm really staring here, it's even material. I thought black was up a pawn at the corner of my eye. And this bishop on B7, despite this pawn being here and being defended, I could see the game continuing where white kind of locks up the position and the bishop isn't quite as powerful as this knight.
Yeah. The king on once again, you might be looking at this position and be like, oh, king off two is really, really weak, right? But we have talked about this previously. A king is only weak, even if it's in the center, if it can be attacked.
That's right. And it's hard to attack this king. There could be a timely E3 type of move to open that bishop up, give it the full scope of the diagonal. But right now, the players are just jockeying for position. The dark squares for white, the light squares for black. Perhaps there's like a queen A2 in the future to get after this B2 pawn. Doesn't look that strong, but it's a way to put some pressure on white. And what's going down on this H file where both rooks want to remain, because if you trade, if you're the one who initiates the trade, then your opponent seizes that open line.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, white's just gonna keep the position kind of close for now. And it's actually interesting to see how is either side going to progress in this position, because on one hand, white has a very nice knight on d4, but white has to keep the the knight there in order to not let black access the position.
That's right. The knight were to move, the queen could come to b3, for example, and now there could be some infiltration. So the knight on d4 is a great piece. The queen on e3 blockades the pawn, and it could be a situation where neither side can truly make progress, because we're talking about the knight. It wants to stay there from white's point of view, but from black's point of view, it's like, well, if that knight does stay there, then I can't really make progress. So white, how do you make progress? Do you push g4? That looks a bit risky. Maybe black could have a timely g5 to undermine the defense of the e5 pawn. So both sides need to tread carefully at this moment. I just think that with the situation as locked up as it is, if you do something drastic, you could actually be the one who suffers rather than play for a win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's one of those slow positions where you just have to kind of wait it out. This g4 move, g5 move is very committal coming from black, but it comes with a really good idea, of course. You just want to undermine the center a little bit. Since white's king is in the center, you want to open up the center in order to get to that king.
And I'm wondering, because I see the eval go to +1, normally that would mean a pawn, but that's not a good move. You lose this pawn. So now I have to look at the queen in line with this white rook. Is there some kind of knight f5 move where now this queen on d5 is under attack from this rook? Potentially black could decide to take 2 rooks for the queen, but I think that would be bad because of king safety. When there's a material imbalance, the safer king is the one that usually wins the game. And you look, you see that evaluation bar skyrocket in white's favor. And the reason why is knight d6 check. This queen is coming in. This pawn f7 is hanging. And I mean, there's all sorts of problems with this queen going to b6 or a7.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is not the exchange you want to make for sure as black.
No. So I think knight f5, and was just played, knight f5. Ooh. Huge moment here because Microsoft, Redmond, their player, Max Uritsky, is the black pieces. And we see that for Anahuac here, it's honestly just looking good on board 2. That knight on f5, if that gets to d6, that's a dark square, which is even better than d4 because you're actually creating threats from d6. The king, the bishop, and the pawn f7 all threatened.
Yeah, I think right now maybe you have to play queen b3 or something, but even still, okay, this is a very interesting move. Actually, I didn't consider this move at all. I mean, there's some tactics happening in this position. It's going to get very, very complicated very quickly. So obviously you don't want to play rook takes d5 because you do lose the rook after f takes e3 and then bishop takes d5. Of course, don't take with the rook, right? Because the rook on d8 is protecting the rook on h8. So white does have to make a pretty important choice here. And there's, if you move the queen, there's potentially e3 and queen takes g2 happening too.
That would not be good. So moving the queen looks very dangerous. And another move that I would have to consider is knight e7 check, because if the king goes up to c7, then I take on d5 with check. But I see after knight e7 check, the king go to b8, and now I need to calculate everything. I'm really not sure what's happening. Oh, wait, knight e7, this is clever. King b8, knight takes queen, pawn takes, and then the knight returns. Back. And it looks like white has an advantage based on the engine evaluation, and that makes sense from at least an optical point of view. This pawn on e4 blocks the bishop, the knight blockades the pawn here, and white can bring the king up, and it looks like white's extra pawn on the queen side is more valuable than black's extra pawn because the doubled pawn that can't move.
Yeah, this is one of those positions where it's an endgame. You might have equal pawns, but the knight is going to be more useful than the light squared bishop.
And it looks like white's spending a lot of time here trying to figure this out. And I would not be surprised if knight e7 check is the only move. I see that white gets an advantage after that, but look at this. You see that eval bar?
It's dropping. And this is probably because of e3. I mean, I'm just looking at this position, man. I want to play e3.
Yeah, e3 looks good for sure. Maybe you could, well, I don't know. If I move the queen away, I don't really have that many squares because if I go queen c6, then knight e7 check is still a deadly fork. Taking on d1, we talked about this. You get 2 rooks for the queen. That sounds good, but the white knight ends up on d6 check at the end of that sequence, and the black king's in trouble. So I think you either put e3 check, in which case the knight will take back on e3 and save the day, or look at that move. That's a good move. Queen to c5.
That's a good move too, yeah.
So can white play queen e? Oh, if queen e3, then your e5 pawn can be stolen. Gosh.
So maybe knight to e3 in this case is a very solid way of defending. But I feel like if knight to e3, then maybe there's rook takes h1. And then after rook takes h1, there's rook to d2. There's just so many tactics happening here.
Yes,
And with like white only having 1 minute on the clock, I'm fully expecting some potential mistake happening.
that's actually a pretty scary position where the king might have to go to g3, and then white says, wait, my king's suddenly safe, and f7, this rook coming to h8. This is a struggle here. There's no side that I would say is clearly going to take this. And knight d4 play to block the check with a strong square protected by a pawn. And what I really want to accomplish for black is I want to get after this pawn here on e5, but I can't do it on the h file. I can't play rook h5 because my rook's hanging on h8, and I don't want to give white the open file. Neither side wants to back down on the king side of the board.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those positions where hard decisions to make with so little time, but that's part of the excitement in chess, right? You know, with lower time, you have to make these decisions very quickly.
Yes, and now with a minute 15 seconds for white and 3:25 for black, it looks like the game is heading in black's favor, but you can be deceived. You can think, oh, my opponent's in time trouble, and they don't have the evaluation bar. They just think it's a complicated position. There's no way that Max Uritsky, strong player, international master, like, oh, I'm -1 here. No, you're looking at it. You're like, okay, is e3 going to work? Should I put my rook on g8 to line that up first? Can white somehow blockade the pawn? What pieces can I allow to be traded? Or should I keep as many as possible because there's a king on f2? You need to figure this out right now. And that's why Max Uritsky is spending the time.
Yeah, for sure. This is one of those positions where I'm just like, okay, that's a very in this position, I would have much preferred to see black go for the attack rather than playing it safe and trying to be solid. When your opponent has less time on the clock, defending is so difficult, but attacking is still pretty easy. So I think rook to g8, like Robert said, would have been a lot more logical move because now you're actually giving white a little bit of leeway, right? Like he can play rook takes h8, move the knight away and maybe get the rook to d6. Like just so many things can happen. Okay, king e3 is, just using the king as a defender. Why not? Nothing can give it a check anyways.
We talked about this in the previous game, right? Where the king in the center can actually be quite safe, all things considered. And now it means no e3 check, that bishop remains blocked by its own pawn, and bishop d5, that looks reasonable, but white's king doing okay on e3. I just got an interesting game in the corner of my eye, so we're going to switch matchups for a second. We have Mark Ginsburg and Lisa McDonald, and the last moves that I saw here was like this knight coming in. This bishop can't take the rook on f1. It's pinned. So International Master Ginsburg brings the knight in, and look at white's clock. Not much time left. Queen coming to hit the g4 pawn, the c2 knight, the rook on f1 all hanging. So it looks like it's going to be a win for black in the very near future. And time.
Oh, it's just way too difficult for white, I think, to make proper defensive moves in these kind of positions.
That's right. And we're going to stay in this match. I want to hop on over to Carissa Yip's game because her position looked challenging a while back. And now that pawn, I mentioned the move knight d5 earlier. It looks like knight d5 was played. And after e takes, d6, d7, that pawn is very happy to arrive in the 7th rank.
Yeah, this is one of those positions where I just think like, I can pretty much guess what happened, Black must have taken on d5, white must have gotten that pawn, and then black was not able to put the bishop on d6 in order to stop the pawn push in time.
It's very weird. It's even material, right? Like both sides have 4 pawns and there's opposite colored bishops. So it's actually still a very complicated battle. Black's piece is doing well. Look at this. Watch out for the b2 square. You can make some inaccuracy and there could even be a sacrifice there on the c3 square. So rook g1 played, putting pressure on g6, but Carissa down to 16.4 seconds left.
Is the clock just not moving for you, or is that just me?
Black's turn.
Oh, it's black's turn.
Yeah, rook g1 was just played and saying, okay, let me put pressure on g6. And the good news is d7 is well defended. The bad news is it's so complicated. Even finding a single move is hard.
Wow, I'm really, really not awake, I guess.
Okay, I mean, queen b6 played. Don't move that bishop. As soon as you move that bishop, g6 is in trouble. So black needs to find a good move down to 40 seconds himself. Queen e5 makes sense to me, trying to line up the queen and the bishop on the diagonal, go for some kind of sacrifice, or rook b8 becomes an idea. That's actually a pretty scary move to me.
I'm just looking at this position and I'm like, wow, this is just like looking at the clock, 20 seconds. I was also thinking maybe g5. It's pretty simple way of never having to deal with queen takes g6 ideas. I'm not a
No,
fan.
rook takes b2 and queen
Wait,
b4.
wait, wait, what?
Oh, missed
Whoa.
the tactic. I was looking out for that, and I was going to mention it earlier, and I decided not to. But rook takes b2 check was there, and the bishop blocked the queen's defense of b4. We will look at that after this game concludes.
That is a tactic that is so difficult to find when you only have 10 seconds on the clock.
Oh, and look at rook b8 play, but I think you could take and queen. Oh, you could have taken on b8. They have no time to figure this all out, though.
I mean, now it's like a coin flip, right? Bishop takes bishop takes c3.
Oh
Maybe you play.
3 seconds. You gotta play something. Queen takes rook. Brave move to play in time trouble. If queen takes, you get a new queen, but rook takes b2 check. 4 seconds. Okay.
Well, what about rook takes? No, even rook takes g6 or bishop takes g6.
Rook b2 and the queen e3.
No.
Oh, it's turned around. Found it. It's mate. Queen takes d2 is mate.
Oh, and we see the tiny head shake from Carissa.
Oh my gosh, that is such a nerve-wracking game. We want to go through this real quick. I know there are other games in session, but that was a wild affair. Queen b6 was played, f4, and after bishop b5, rook takes b2 check. The queen lands on b4 because the pawn is pinned, and no longer does the queen save it. Queen takes c3 leads to a forced checkmate. Takes, king b1, queen b2 would have been checkmate. So that was the first miss from black. And then after this move, rook e6, queen b7 here, bishop d3, rook to b8. You can actually sacrifice the queen for the rook because after takes, bishop takes, d8 equals queen. You take me. Oh, wait, wrong move order. Wrong move order.
Wrong move order. You got to be so careful about this.
Yeah, rook g6 first, I guess, is the way to go because if you do this move order, see this? How tricky it is? I even made a blunder. Bishop g6, there's rook takes g6.
And then the rook on g1 is unprotected at the end of the entire line.
What a crazy position. Trying to figure this out just like the players were. And it looks like black is the one who ends out on top because the attack happened so quickly. Rook g6, the final straw. Bishop takes g6 check looked like the way to go.
Ooh, there were just so many tactics there, and especially in these kind of positions, right? You're always looking for checks, captures, and threats. Checks, captures, and threats. It's like, and for these kind of situations, you're always like, which one is the best, and you just play one that kind of makes sense. But it could be a mistake, especially when both kings are so exposed.
Wow, and yeah, so this one, Carissa, unfortunately for her, she lost the game. So American Express, they got to figure out. We'll check out these results in a bit, but we have this game here all locked up. But black has. How many? No extra pawns? Is that right? It's even material, but black's
it's even
3.
pawns. Even pawns. Yes, took me a moment there to count them.
But look at the evaluation. It's like -3 despite even material, and it's because black's pawns are stable. H5 is dropping. D5 is in trouble. And look at this, Nemo. The B5 and A4 pawns stop white's progress, where white is the one up pawns on the queen side.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just like one of these situations where, you just feel like you can't really do much because you can't even bring a pawn to go defend the d5 pawn. You just have to deal with the fact that black has 3 passed pawns.
That's right. And well, it looks like black is going to take this one. I'm going to move on over to a game we haven't checked out yet. Raja Panjwani. And I saw that the king was on h7. That looked pretty scary. There's queens lined up on this diagonal. Queen c2 check played. Not that much time.
Okay, the king looks more. I don't know which position I would rather have: potential checkmate or a king super exposed. But
no way.
Wait! Is that not checkmate soon again?
Bishop f6, king h5, queen e5 is the mate. Unfortunately, the king looks like it could escape here if you trade queens, but queen e5 is deadly. Oh my god.
This is why I'm so scared to move my king up the board, by the way, because if you walk into your enemy territory, you're going to run into their pieces that block your king from moving.
It's so wild because if not for queen e5 check, and it's a win by resignation, if not for queen e5, I actually don't think that black is better. Like, I think it's about level because the king is safe. This rook is offering a trade. This queen can come to d3 with check. So if not for queen e5, which is clearly what was missed, this would have been a good move.
If only there is no checkmate, then I can't lose.
yeah. If checkmate didn't exist for now, then it'd be fine. And I guess,
of course.
I guess back here, walking the king up too risky. The king back to a square like h2, offering the queen trade in this manner. The king feels more sheltered as it is staying away from black's pieces.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And I think we do a couple. This game we were just looking at. It looks like black is going to convert this. rook to the second rank, you want to push your pawns. So a3, that's good technique. Rook check on f4, the king comes back to a5. You can also go to b3 and then drop your king back to a4. Push your pawn to shield the check. Those pawns are gone.
Yeah, this will be a very. This is a very textbook king pawn rook endgame.
Yes, and rook f4, that's the best defense, and king b3 just check. Okay, this could actually be a bit tricky. Sometimes it's hard to figure out the right way forward because this pawn on b4 is pinned, and if the king goes up, there was this check. But this move, rook to g3, you have to stop the enemy king from getting in. You cannot allow the king to b3. And now that the king can go to b3, doesn't take the opportunity, but still objectively winning. But now you have to figure it out all over again.
Mm-hmm.
So here's
still very, very much winning, though. I mean, every move here pretty much wins unless you accidentally stalemate white. And we're not expecting that to really happen, so...
No, and the king goes away. And this rook, good defense so far, though, by white keeping the enemy rook off the d1 square, and king d3 marching
However,
forward.
We will be running out of moves rather soon. Maybe...
Yeah, that was...
Yeah.
Push one, and there's a fork there. So it's actually really difficult because a2 in most other circumstances would actually be a draw. So you do not want to push this pawn too soon if the enemy king can just sit in the corner. And
wait, black is at risk of repeating position.
Yes, got to be very careful.
Okay.
I would exactly. I would go here just to avoid it, and then maybe even move my rook to a new place. That's
okay, exactly. I think black is overthinking this a lot.
Yes.
I feel like she is she can pretty much play any. Oh wait, no, rook to h3 was a draw.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, in a time scramble, and it's what happens where you're nervous. And honestly, black is the lower rated player of the two. She's trying her best. And next move, rook f1. She found it. She figured out a way to coordinate her king and a rook just to trade the rooks off, and then that's a winning endgame.
Yeah.
And now, a2 was probably the easiest because the pawn would have promoted, but this
will work too.
Wow.
Whew.
Wait. Okay, a bit dangerous here. Don't go king c3.
Oh no!
Don't play king c3. Resigned?
Wait, why?
Oh, why would you resign? You could potentially save this game. It is a losing position, right? We know that it's winning for black. We see mate and 8 moves, but at this point, just play on a little bit. Hope that your opponent brings the king over here.
Yeah, and anything can happen in a blitz game, right?
Yes, and you have to win this game. This is actually quite instructive. You have to be willing to give up this pawn, because if you don't, then the king comes here and you're like, wait, my king can't get in. If I go here, my king touches the third rank, then that's stalemate. So what you have to be willing to do is actually give up this pawn, and when the king takes, king c3, king b1, and pawn b2. So you end up in a basic king and pawn endgame, but you have to be willing to jettison that pawn so that you can promote your other.
Yeah. Black definitely had enough time there to figure out how to not stalemate. However, if you're for anybody who, wants to potentially play for a win, that was a position to play for a draw. That was definitely the chance to play for a draw. If you were going to play for a stalemate in any position, it was going to be that one.
That's right. And it was close because I could easily see if black had white's time, right? The time to reverse. A quick move here. Let me bring my king in. Oh, shoot, too late, stalemate. And you have to just rely on the study. These players have worked hard to get the ratings that they're at. You need to be willing to give up this pawn, which I think is difficult to figure out over the board if you haven't studied it before.
For sure. So this is some very noteworthy endgame technique.
Indeed. Well, it looks like most of the matches are done, actually. It looks like the round has come to its conclusion. Some of the top teams still out there in the lead, but others inching closer. Just because you may lose a match with board points being the determining factor, you still have a shot. There's another 3 rounds tomorrow. Nemo, I mean, that was exciting. Carissa Yip in that back and forth battle. Unfortunately, she lost. That's one of the teams, Amex, American Express, that probably not thrilled about how this third round went, but you can hardly blame Carissa. At that point, it was a 50-50 game.
Yeah, for sure.
In a bullet time scramble, things like that happen.
Yeah, well, definitely, it's a coin flip. It's really a coin flip sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, just what exhilarating chess. What a day it's been with both of the divisions, the Eastern and Western pools. We're going to be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Pacific. We can flash the schedule for you just to remind everybody of when to tune back in. 7 a.m. Pacific time, and then again at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. It's been a blast.
Yeah, it's been an absolutely long day for me and also for you. We've both been doing our respectable things. I was actually watching your PogChamps commentary earlier, and I spent most of the day helping Sardosh and coaching Sardosh. So it's been a very long day for sure.
Yes, and well, sure, a long evening for the players who just competed in the first 3 games. Some of them, if they're on the East Coast, it's past midnight right now. Not easy to play chess that late, but it was a great start. We have much more excitement tomorrow, and thank you all for tuning in. And please remember, just one final call to action, that there's a lot of money being raised, hopefully, for these initiatives that FIDE has put out. It's for charity. So please, if you're able to, do use the donate command. There's a panel in the Twitch chat. So use that, get involved. Chess for People with Disabilities, the program for veterans, and Chess in Education. Great programs, great initiatives, and a lot of the companies themselves are donating individually outside of this tournament. So it's great.
For sure.
All right. See you, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow.
All right. Have a great night. Bye.